Hello guys, welcome to another video. Today we'll learn how to create a button component in Figma and apply all of the component properties. If you're not familiar with Figma component properties, don't worry, I've got you covered. I already made a video explaining them, so check it out in the description below before jumping into this one. Before we get started, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions at any point, let me know in the comments. I always love to hear from you guys. Right, let's get into it. Right, we're going to start by typing the text, the button text. So you can type any text, is okay. I'll just call it button text. Right, then I'll give it this fill. I'm going to select this one. Yeah. For now, right, I'm going to select this color for now. So we're going to use this icon. Then I'm going to place it 2 times in front and behind the text. Then I'm going to select 3 of them and combine them into an auto layout. Right, then I'm going to give a padding. So whichever padding you give is up to you. It depends on what you want to achieve with your button. Right, so there's no one size fits all. But what I used to advise is when you are giving padding to your buttons, whatever padding you give on the horizontal for the horizontal padding, so either you give 10 or 20 left and right, or let's say 15, okay, let's say 20 left and right. For top and bottom I'll give 10. Right, so that's like basically how that is a rule that I used to use, but you can tweak it to fit whichever to fit the way you want it. Right, so this icon, I'm going to change the color to the same color as the text. I'm going to change it to this one. I'm going to do the same for this. Right, so now we are going to apply a fill to this button. Right, so this is going to be the first, like the primary button. Right, so I'm going to add a fill of white, but I'm going to change it to this blue, 500. So I'm going to change every other thing inside to white. So because I just intentionally use the gray color first so that we can see where we're going. So I can change it to this. This is not the purest white, but I can go for the pure white. So I'm going to add a little bit of padding, just like 4 pixels or 6 pixels. I'm going to use 6 pixel padding for the button. Right, so that is our first button. So we're going to call this one button, and we're going to create a component with it. Now we're going to start adding the component properties that we talked about in the previous video. So the first one we add is the label. Right, is the text property. So I'm going to apply the text property to this text. So I'm going to select the text, then I come over to this side and click the plus button. So wherever you see the text that you typed inside this place is going to show here on the right hand side. Then you can now apply a text property. So I can call this maybe button label. And once I apply the text property, let me bring an example out for testing. So this is an example of this button, or even an instance of the button. So when I click it, you can see that I can easily now change whatever I want to change it to. Profile. Right, I can change it from there. So now we come back to this one. So now that we have added the text property, we have to add the layer property, which is the one that we use to, the boolean property, the one that we can use to show or hide a layer. Right, so that's the boolean property. So I'm going to add the boolean property to this icon and this icon, and we're also going to add the instance swap property to this icon and this icon. You can also add the boolean property to the text. That's if you're going to be using the button without the text, you can decide to add a boolean property to the text so that you can easily turn it on and off. But for me, I'm going to always have the text in the button, so I don't need to apply it to the text, but I'm going to apply to the icon on the right and left, because it's not in every case that I will need both icons to be active or to show. And I want to hide one icon for some cases and review another icon for another case. So I'm going to start with the left. I will I'll add a layer, a boolean property. So I'll come here under appearance, you will see this icon, then I click it, I click on plus, then I'm going to type show, not show, I'll just type icon, right? Let me say left icon. So once I type left icon, the left icon will be here. Can you see? So if I click here, I can see I can turn it on and off, the left icon. So before we apply that to the right icon, let us add an instance swap property to this icon so that we can easily swap it and change the icon, right? So I've added the boolean property to the icon, and I'm going to add an instance swap property. So for instance swap property, I have to click this button, this one. So I'll call it left icon. But because you can't name two properties the same name for a component, for the same component, so I'm going to have to make a little twist on this one. So I usually use this icon that looks like a recycle icon, which is showing that you can swap, right? Just a swap icon. So I'm going to add it right in front of it. So swap icon left, that's basically what I'm saying, right? So if I click here, I can see swap icon left, left icon, swap left icon. That's what I mean. So I can easily come here and change the icon to something else, and once I change it, you can see it change. It will even inherit the color and the style of the button. So so that's how to apply the icon, the instance swap icon, instance swap property and the boolean property to an icon. So I'm going to apply for the right icon. I'm going to speed up the video a little bit so that we don't waste time. Yes. So, and if you're wondering how I'm able to open up the emoji window on if you're using a Windows PC, you just press Windows plus period, right? But if you're using a Mac, I don't use a Mac, so I don't really know how to do it, but I know that there's a way. I think it's very simple. You can check it out on YouTube and find out how to do it, right? But for Windows PC, just press the Windows key and the period key. That's full stop. Yeah. So it will open this up and you can switch to emoji and search for whichever emoji you want to use. So that's it. So I've applied the property to this. So you can see the way the property are organized on the on this panel. Button, label, profile. That's it. The icon left is on, the right icon is on. I can turn off the right icon and let it just look like this, or I can turn on the right icon and turn off the left icon and let it look like this. So let me switch the icon to something that makes more sense. So let's say I use arrow and I use this one, maybe this one, right? So now you can see that this one did not inherit the color, and that happens in some cases, right? This is not something I can really control. Sometimes it happens because of some issues with the icon library you are using or Figma itself, right? But I think most of the time it's always about the icon library you are using. So whenever you see something like that, you just go back and change the color, just like what I've done, and change it back to what you want it to look like, and that's it. That's a quick fix to it. So now that we have created the button component, now we have to start creating the variant, and that's where the variant property comes in, right? So I'm going to copy these labels so that I can use it here. So I'll remove the auto layout, then I'll do the same for this. I'm going to remove the auto layout here. So let's delete this, we don't need it. So this is the primary. We are going to create secondary and the outline version of the button, and this one we're going to create the defaults, the hover, the disabled, and focus. So mind you, these things don't have to be inside the component, they are going to be outside because they can't be inside the same component. So now for us to create the variant, so we are going to add a variant to this button first to create the first variant. So we're going to have a total of 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 variants, right? So I'm going to click here. You can see this small tiny button, add variant. So once I click it, it adds a variant. So it just creates a duplicate of this button inside, just within the components, right? So you can see, because this is also like a frame, so it automatically creates a frame, so we can easily resize it. So if I hold my control button and expand it up, I can decide it to go on top of this. So I just need this label to indicate, but I'm going to put my component on top of it. So I'm going to spread it down like this, holding my control key. Then I'm going to spread it to the back like this too. I don't need it to go too far. Let me move this primary, secondary, and outline buttons forward a bit. So just like that, and I click on my button component again, then I expand it down. So I'm just basically creating space for more variants because we're going to have more. So I'm going to create the hover state of the button, right? So we're going to create it one by one. So let me expand this a little bit more. So now I'm going to place this here. I just want to align it with the button. So let's create the hover state. So how do we want this button to behave when you hover on it, right? I'm going to come here and pick a deeper version of this blue. So the first one I will use was this 5. So maybe we'll use number 6 or 7. So I'm going to come here, just use the eyedropper to and pick 6. So this is what will happen when we hover. So when you hover on the button, it becomes darker. You can make it lighter if you want, depending on what you prefer. So there are different hover effects that you can add to a button. And one, if you check my channel, there's a video that I've done about creating an hover effect or a hover effect on a button. So you can check it out. It will be linked in the description too. Then so remember that whichever property we have created added to this button will also be applied here. So all of the text property, the text property and the boolean property and also the instance swap property will all be applied to this as well. So this is the hover effects. Then let's create the disabled version of the button, right? So I just hold Alt to drag this because I want to create a duplicate of it. So I can do that, or I click this small plus button. If I click it, it creates a duplicate, right? Then I can make use of the duplicate. So here, this one, for the disabled version, I want the icons to have a slightly dark color. So that's where we are going to go back to that color that we picked earlier, that number 5. Then the fill of the button will now be maybe number 4 or number 3. Let's see. Number 3 is too dark. Let's use number 2. Yeah, we can go with number 2, right? We can go with number 2. So if this button is also disabled, we want it to have a stroke. So I'm going to add a stroke like this, and I'm going to pick a color for the stroke. So I think I'm still going to do number 5 for the stroke. Yes, so that's how our button will look on disabled, right? So, and you can decide not to use stroke. It all depends on you. This is not like one rule or one regulation that you must follow. It depends on you. Just whichever way you like to create your button, whichever way you like your button to look like, that's what you should go for, right? So you can decide to use strokes, you can decide not to use the stroke. It's all up to you. So for the focus version of this button, I'm going to make a duplicate of the primary and bring it down here. So in this case, we are going to, for us to create the focus version, we're going to create a rectangle. I'm just going to create a rectangle and I'm going to call it focus, right? So I'm going to change the name to focus. In this rectangle, I'm going to swap the fill, Shift X. So I'm going to swap the fill to the stroke. So the stroke will carry the primary color. So this same color, this same blue, that's the stroke. That's the color we use for the stroke. So let's check the radius of this 6 pixels. So I'm going to round the corners of this to 6. Then I'm now going to copy. I'll just press Ctrl X to cut. And I'll come inside this button and I'll paste it. So once I paste it, it will look like something that doesn't make sense, but just all we need this thing is to stay around the button. So we're going to set it to absolute position. So once I set the rectangle or the focus rectangle to absolute position, I'm going to place it at the center here, just like this. So all we need it to do is to come outside a bit. So I'm going to drag it and put it maybe 1 pixel around the button. It can be 1 pixel, it can be 2 pixel, whichever one you prefer, right? So this is based on preference also. So I'm going to drag this one too. I'm just dragging without any button. I'm just dragging without any button because when I was expanding the component the other time, I used control, but now I'm not using control, and I will tell you why I use control shortly. So I'm going to drag this one too will be 1 pixels because I'm using 1 pixel. So when I zoom in, I will be able to count the pixels because this thing are like they're boxes of pixels. So right, 1 pixel, and I'm going to make this one 1 pixel also, just 1 pixel, just like that. So so for the focus, the variance button is 6, the focus is 6. So as you can see, the corner of between the focus and the button is not looking consistent enough, and that's because the focus is a bit bigger than the button. So let's increase this to 7 or 8. I think 8 looks good, so 8 looks more consistent. Now we're not done with the focus, so I'm still going to click the focus, and I'm going to set the stroke to outside of the I'm going to set it on the outside of the stroke of the rectangle. So I don't want it to be inside. I don't want the stroke to stay inside. I want it to stay outside. So maybe if I drop this back to 6, maybe it will look good. I still think it looks better. Okay, so one last thing that we're going to do to this focus, we want it to be able to respond to the button if we expand the button and make it wider or taller. So I'm going to select this, we're going to set it to left and right, and we're going to set this to top and bottom so that this button responds to left and right, top and bottom. So mind you, as I was creating this, I did not name these buttons, right? So, and you can see the name that Figma will give it by default is the variant. You just call it variant 1, variant 2, variant whatever, right? So I'm going to come here and I'm going to say under the properties, because that's the variant. So the property 1, you can see that's where we have variant 1, variant 2, variant 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to call this one type, right? Not type, rather, it's state first. So the state of the button. So I'll call this one default. I like to use lowercase. Yeah, default. This one will be hover. This one will be disabled. And this will be focus, right? Focus. So that's it. So in a way, I want this focus, this color, I want it to be a darker version. I want it to be the hover, because if you don't hover, you cannot focus. So let us make it the hover color, so it is when the hover that the focus can work. So now if I bring out a button now and test, you can see on the side now we now have states, right? We can move from default to hover to disabled. We can also switch to focus, right? And we can go back to default. So I saw that I did not correctly spell that default, so I'm going to come back to correct it. Yeah, that's correct. So default. So I'm going to now make the types now, right? So I'm going to select this. Okay, before we create that, let us. So I said why I was using control to resize this or to change the size of this is because if I don't use control, look at what happens. Everything inside moves with it responds to your movement. But if I hold control, it stays wherever I want it to stay, right? That's the reason. That's why you must use control. And that's another thing, is that if you scale from the side, if you scale the shape from the side, from the right hand side, it will not affect, because all of this, they are responding to the left and top. So because of the constraint, so if I want to ignore this constraint and scale it from this side, that's why I have to use the control key. Okay, that being said, let's create the type. So I'm going to create another variant, which is the property again. So I'm going to create another type. So I'll call this variant type, right? I'll call this one default. So that default, I'm supposed to, instead of having default, the first one we want to call it primary. So I want you to pay attention to what is being highlighted. So when I hover on primary here, you can see only these buttons are highlighted, because all of them are the primary currently. Until I create another state for another set of buttons, all the buttons inside the component will still be primary. So I'm going to select this 4 buttons, and I'm going to make duplicates of them. right? Then I'll call this one. Let me not call it anything yet because I might still delete based on what I want, right? So let me see how the secondary looks here. So the secondary is the one with no fill out through, right? So what we're going to do for this secondary is that, so we are going to see something like an error here, but don't worry, we're going to come back to fix that. So instead of having the white buttons, we're going to have the buttons carry this color, while the button itself, I mean, instead of having the icons have white color, we're going to have the icon carry this blue color, and the button itself carrying no fill. So I'm going to copy this color. I'm going to copy the color code, and I'm going to place it here for the um for the text, right? For the text and icon. Then for the fill, I'm going to remove the fill here. Then we're going to have it look like this. So now, because I already have this, I really don't see the need for this one, so I will delete it because I'm going to use this as a template for the remaining buttons in this for the secondary button, right? So for the hover, what are we going to have on the hover? When you hover on a button that doesn't have a fill, then it should now have a fill, right? Isn't it? Well, sometimes you might just decide that it's the text or the icons that you want to dim the color, but me, I think I'll prefer to have a fill. So what I will do is I'll fill it. So currently it's white, but I'm going to just fill it with a very light shade of this blue. So I might use this one, yeah, as the fill. Then now for the buttons and the icon, so instead of them to have this blue, we're going to use the hover blue, this one. So that's it. Then I'm going to make a duplicate of the primary again. Then this time around we're going to create the disabled. So all we have to do here is just create the disabled and let it look exactly like this, just without the stroke, right? So I'm going to change everything that looks like blue. As you can see, I'm using the selection colors to pick it because it's easier that way. So I'm going to change it to 5. Is it 5? Yeah, it's 5, right? Just like this. Then for the focus, so I'm going to use this one, the primary. So I'm taking a sneak peek of this one because it's not all in my head. So most of the time I have to write these things down before I can create the button. So yeah, so for the focus, we just need to have, because this thing doesn't have a stroke by default, we just need to have this focus rectangle. So I'm going to come here and copy it. So I'll click on the focus, I'll right click and copy, then I'll click this button and I'll just Ctrl V and paste inside. So it will now look like as if it has a stroke, but it is actually not a stroke, it is the focus stroke. So normally, assuming this is just an outline button, it will have double stroke, right? So all of these are going to be the secondary buttons, right? So we are going to change it from primary to secondary, and once we do that, we should be able to get rid of the errors on our button. Okay, we've not gotten rid of the errors because the names of the buttons are still not going together. So the hover column, you can see this one is hover and this one is default. So let's change this to hover. So once you have entered the name once, you don't have to type it again, just select from the name from the drop down. So this one is disabled and this one is focus. So now we've been able to get rid of that error. So we're going to do something similar to the outline. So I'm going to just speed up the video and create my outlines because I just believe that you can create your outline based on how you want it to look like, right? So it doesn't have to look like my own. So I'm going to speed up this now. So yeah, I've created the buttons. So I'm going to now select the 4 buttons here and call them outline, right? So So not the state, the type outline. Okay, so we have been able to create this. So let me be sure that there's no error. So there's error, so that's in the naming. So this is default, and this should be hover. Just like I said, you don't have to type it again. This is disabled and this is focus. Okay, so I think we are good to go. So I can change the type to outline. I can change the state to focus. I can't believe do I have another hover that is not okay. So let me change it to hover. So it's always good to test your component out so that you can see if there's a mistake. So and yes, there's a way Figma used to mess up this organization here, so we can rearrange it. So the way it's supposed to be arranged is after this, the variant types, the state, the type, the button, the label should come next. So I'm going to put the label here, then left icon first, then the boolean icon for left icon, the boolean property for left icon first, then the instance swap, then the same thing for right, boolean property first, then the instance swap. So that's the way it's supposed to be arranged, so that you can understand that this is left and this is right. We can change the left, we can change it to anything we like. We can also do the same for the right and change it to anything we like. So I hope this helps you. If you enjoyed this video, you can give me a thumbs up and you can like the video. You can also share, and I have more videos that you might be interested in. You can check the recommended videos. You can subscribe to my channel if you also enjoyed the video. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the very next one.